What's up, everybody? Welcome into yet another edition of the Baseline Jumper Podcast. My name is Jason Goldstein. Alongside me, my partner, Ben McDonald. This is not going to be the typical Baseline Jumper that you're used to because Ben and I, we've disagreed on things over the past 120 some odd shows that we've done. But tonight is going to sound a bit different because we were having a bit of a heated exchange today, and we're going to get into that on the show. But before we do, I'm still going to be a human being and ask how you're doing.
I'm doing just great, and it's great to hear the passion in your voice again as you intro our show, the Baseline Jumper, because with all the times I feel like we've really turned into a somber show at the opening, and it really got me going to hear the excitement in your voice again, and it's giving me all the tingles in all the right places, Jason. I got to tell you.
Well, I don't know how to start a sports argument after you just said tingles in all the right places. But look, I'll do my best. You know, we had a plan for this episode. We were going to start getting into some of the more interesting teams heading to Orlando next month for the resumption of the NBA season. We're going to talk about some dark horse contenders or why teams, you know, might benefit from the layoff. We're going to save that because my point guard and dear friend Kyrie Irving made some headlines this week. So, Ben, I'm going to let you set the table. And then we're going to get into this right now because I'm a little pissed off at how this guy's getting portrayed. So go for it, buddy.
Well, I'm really glad to see that you're building friendships among the team. I'm glad that Kyrie Irving has become a close personal confidant. Seems like a great guy.
I still think the earth is round, though. But, you know, we can't agree on everything.
Well, yeah, you mentioned one of the many hot takes that Kyrie has engaged in. And it is interesting. He has a very contentious relationship with the media, which is really quite ironic because he's going to be a great media commentator when he does retire because he's great at kind of taking these takes and having things to say. My only problem here was, for those of you who don't know, Kyrie Irving was on a call with players who supported basically not going to Orlando. The idea was, we're not going to play. This would be a better form of protest, theoretically. And you know what? It's not a bad point. There's a lot going on in the world. There are more important things in basketball. There's no doubt about that. However, newsflash to everyone, Kyrie Irving is not playing in Orlando. So there is no we. There is no Kyrie and the other folks that are going. Because Kyrie, I mean, he may go to Orlando. Probably shouldn't, given that he's not going to play. But that's neither here nor there. He is not playing in Orlando. So there is no we, there is no me and the others, because he's not participating.
Oh, Ben. Just because they had a call that said, hey, we think that going to Orlando might be a bad idea because if we go right back to playing basketball, there's going to be no social justice. There's going to be no changes. Kyrie's not organizing a boycott, okay? I mean, take it from Michelle Roberts, right, the executive director of the Players Association. She went on record and said they are not having a fight. They are having a discussion. All Kyrie Irving is doing is using his platform as an athlete to divert attention towards what all of us as Americans should prioritize right now, and that's diffusing systematic oppression. I want the NBA back as badly as anybody. We do a basketball podcast. We live and breathe basketball when we're not doing our full-time jobs. We love the sport. But I don't think Kyrie Irving's saying, all right, I'm going to pick 50 of you guys in the NBA. We're going to go start our own league. No, people are upset. A lot of people in this country are upset right now, and they have a right to be. So all Kyrie Irving is doing is speaking out of anger. I support everything he has said except for let's start our own league. That's not happening. Okay? You have the support of guys like Avery Bradley, Dwight Howard, Lou Williams, Carmelo Anthony. I don't know where Chris Paul stands. I feel like he's a little bit in the middle. But this is the other problem, and I thought this was interesting, Ben, is that, you know, most of the guys on the call that were supporting Irving's claims and suggestions are role players. You know, they had that call, I think it was in early May. It was Adam Silver and 8 of the NBA's best players. So it was Giannis, Kawhi, LeBron, Durant, Curry, and they were all implementing a unified front to get basketball back, right? Mm-hmm. You don't think there's oppression going on in the NBA where the role players feel oppressed by the treatment the top superstars get? So what Kyrie Irving is doing is he's being the voice for the players that don't get as much of a platform as the Avery Bradleys, as the Dwight Howards, who is a shell of his former All-Star form. So all he's doing is speaking up for the little guy, speaking up for what he believes in, regardless of whether he's playing or not. I support Kyrie Irving. He's not doing anything that's anti-police. He's not doing anything that's anti-NBA. He's having a discussion. And I think this discussion would be happening whether he was playing or not. So I'm going to ask you, if he was healthy and playing, right, would you have any problem with this?
Oh, no, of course not. And I want to start by saying Michelle Roberts saying they're not fighting, they're just having a discussion sounds just like what my parents would have said when I was 5 years old. We're not fighting, we're just having a discussion. Or when you say, can we have ice cream? We'll see. It's a classic parent line. So good on you, Michelle Roberts. But I think, yes, if Kyrie's playing and he's a part of this, the Nets are a part of this picture, I would feel really a lot better about him coming in and doing this. The problem is he's trying to take over this and insert himself somewhere where he doesn't totally belong. This isn't really his call. This isn't something he's really a part of.
He's not making a call. He's making a suggestion. Ben, if I suggest to you that we switch to a figure skating podcast, you say, nah, Jason, I think
we're big Michelle Kwan fans.
Pretty, and she's awesome, but like, oh no, we're pretty well versed in basketball. Let's stick to basketball. Like, you turned down my suggestion. I'm not going to say, well, I'm not doing baseline jumper with you anymore. Just because Kyrie Irving had a frustration of saying, well, we can't, support the Black Lives Matter movement from inside a bubble in Orlando, so we want to figure out another way to do it. There may not be another way. The NBA is coming back next month, whether Kyrie Irving likes it or not. All I'm trying to argue is that I don't think he's doing anything wrong. I mentioned this at the end of last week's show, and you diffused it right away. The March on Washington that's supposed to take place at the end of August, right? You don't think NBA players are going to want to be a part of that? They're going to be in the thick of the playoff race. We said probably the end of the first, start of the second round when that March on Washington takes place. As an American who's free, you can't force any of those guys on current playoff teams that might still be down there. You can't tell them, oh, hey, you can't go. So I think that's what Kyrie Irving's trying to argue. I don't think that Kyrie has any malicious intent whatsoever. I think his reputation's preceding him here because he's coming across a psychopath. And look, I don't support everything Kyrie said to the media. I don't. But right now, he's doing what he feels is right. And I don't have a problem with that. I know a lot of people do. No. I'm taking his side on that.
Again, his message is good. His message is solid. It's just the place he's coming from is weak. I think we would have to change our name if we switch to figure skating. Maybe triple axel jumper. I'm not sure. I'll have to do a little research. I've watched Blades of Glory a couple times, so I think I should be good. But I think, yes, when we see this March on Washington that's coming in August, ultimately, the reality is any player who wants to go is going to be allowed to go, and I will bet my bottom dollar.
You're telling me that if Chris Middleton in the middle of the second round says to the Bucks organization, hey, I'm going to go to Washington even though we got a game tomorrow, you really think they're going to say, well, hey, Chris, like, we got a game? Like, that's his job.
I mean, he's not going to play. Like, he's going to have a 2-week quarantine, and he's going to miss the rest of the season. But he can go. I mean, it's his decision. Like, if he wants to go, he's not going to get paid. Like, he's not going to get paid for those game checks. He's not going to get to play in the next games, but he can go. I mean, that's what they're going to say. And I don't think that that's a shocking thing. You can't, at the end of the day, it's going to be player decision. If they want to go, that's their right and their freedom to do that. But they're not going to be able to come back and play afterwards, and they're not going to get paid in all likelihood for those games. Now, that latter part might become a little bit of an issue. That might become thorny in terms of the paychecks, but I don't know how all the playoff compensation works, so I'll have to look into that a little bit more. But they're almost certainly, I would bet my bottom dollar, as I said, they will let them go. The problem is going to be they're not going to be able to just come back. They're going to have to go through quarantine, as well they should. I mean, they're going to have to go through quarantine protocol when they come back. And so if they don't want to participate in those games, they can go protest. And you know what? To Kyrie's point, he's absolutely right. If that's more important, and you know what? I think that's a great stand. You know what? That's awesome. If there are players willing to stand up for that and sacrifice paychecks to protest, that is going to have a huge, huge impact.
That's why I think this is so powerful, because These are role players making $7 to $8 million a year that are having Kyrie Irving's back, right? Like, so everyone's going to end up chalking this up to be LeBron versus Kyrie. So who's on LeBron's side just wants to go and play versus whoever's backing Kyrie Irving, right? You have two of LeBron's teammates, two very important pieces of this Laker team, Avery Bradley and Dwight Howard, both on Kyrie's side and expressing how they feel. So
Sure.
you telling me because they both came out and supported Kyrie Irving that it's going to cause a rift in the Lakers locker room?
Not at all.
Come
But
on.
let me pose a hypothetical to you though. Which has a bigger impact, do you think? None of the players reporting to play and there being no NBA season because everyone says we're going to protest and not play. Or one or two players maybe not showing up. If there were significant players that didn't show up, or, I mean, some form of protest wherein some players don't play, some players protest during the games, they organize something, which I think what will happen is that the NBA is going to be smart and they're going to allow a protest because, I mean, I think Adam Silver's going to have to win over some conservative owners who probably, if I had to guess, I'd guess like some Tillman Fertittas, some Dolans out there are not going to want the players to come out and do something. But my guess is there'll be something like a patch. There'll be a patch that says BLM on all the jerseys. It's really not that hard. We do it when a commissioner dies. I don't see any reason why we can't put a giant BLM patch on there. Do something like that. It's an easy way to show respect for that, and then let the players protest as much as they'd like to. Do a moment of silence before the games. You can have something at halftime where there's speakers who come out and do this, and there's no halftime shows. So instead of the halftime pregame or halftime show during the game, they can have something where, someone speaks on what's going on. I mean, all these things are possible, and I think the NBA will easily figure this out. And I'm curious for you, would you prefer, instead of having something like that, to have just no games at all, and that's the protest? Do you think that's more significant?
I don't think there's going to be a protest. I mean, I think they're just figuring out how to do both right now. Look, basketball is taking a back seat to social justice, and it should right now. Look, all sports right now are taking a back seat. You've
Absolutely.
seen the NFL try things over the years with, guys taking a knee for the national anthem. You've seen players wearing I Can't Breathe shirts when Eric Gardner was killed a few years ago. You see things like that. That's not going to bring about any change. What Kyrie Irving's trying to do is not start his own league with the 80 guys that have his back. He's focusing on the role that players could play using their platforms in combating systematic racism, investing in black communities, and sticking together throughout the process. He's not trying to divide the NBA. It looks like that. The media is spinning it that way. But he's just trying to say, like, hey, guys, look, I know I'm injured, but wait a second. Do we really want to go back and play? Because that's a sign that everything's fine. That's where I think he's coming from. If Sean Marks calls up Kyrie Irving and says, listen, like, there's gonna be games, like, we appreciate what you're doing, he's not gonna jeopardize his job with the Nets. I know he's willing to say he'll give up everything he has for, social justice, and I hope he's willing to put his money where his mouth is. There's no other superstars taking that stance. I don't know if they're afraid to or whatnot, but Kyrie is the only one of that ilk, a multi-time All-Star in his prime, that's speaking up against this.
It's a phenomenal point.
I don't think it's a matter of health, Ben. I think both him and Kevin Durant are healthy. But why are the Nets going to risk putting them out there in a weird format where we just had a 4-month layoff of no basketball in a bubble in Orlando? No, they're two of the best players in this game. Bring them along when you have a full training camp and a little more clarity going into next season. I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
They can still do their part to support the movement and move forward with real changes. That's fine. But this is the thing, Ben. Kyrie's not being selfish, right? You said that, it's not the message, it's the messenger.
1,000%.
But he's speaking up for everyone that is legally obligated to go to Orlando and play when their hearts may not be there.
It's a great point. And ultimately, you're absolutely right in the fact that he's the only one who's stepping up. And I think even the most vocal critic here, unless you're like, you got your MAGA hat on and your AR-15 across your lap right now, you're able to say, okay, at the end of the day, if this was